Okay, this is problem number 5, the last of the class exercises in 7.2. Fundamental identities and the cofunctions here. This is a little bit more involved problem than the previous ones. As you can tell, you have parts A, B, C, and D, so it's kind of like 4 problems in one. You're given one piece of information and you're to use it to find the remaining pieces. You're given that sine of 30 degrees is 1/2 and use the trigonometric identities to find the exact value of each of the following. Okay, if sine is 30 and you want the cosine of 60. Okay, if you use the cofunctions like we did earlier, here that the cosine is sine 90 minus theta. So cosine we're going to replace with sine of 90 minus that angle, and we get the sine of 30, and that is 1/2. Since these two were cofunctions, they would have the same value. You add those two together, you get the 90. They actually have the same value, and that's going through that. That was A. B is cosine squared 30 degrees. Well, you can use sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Your sine squared you were given was 1/2. The identity had that 1 in it. So we've got 1/2 squared plus cosine squared equals 1. 1/4. 1/2 squared is 1/4 plus cosine squared is 1. Cosine squared 1. Move the 1/4 over minus 1/4. 4/4 minus 1/4, because the whole number 1 is 4/4 minus 1/4 is 3/4. So cosine squared is 3/4. Okay, now you've got the cosecant of pi over 6. Pi over 6 is 30 degrees. And if you use this little form right here, the cosecant and sine are reciprocals. So it's like the cosecant of 30, which is just cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so 1 over sine. Remember that sine was 1/2, and when you take the reciprocal of 1/2, you get 2. So your answer is 2 for C. D is the secant of pi over 3. Well, pi over 3 is the same thing as 60 degrees. So we're kind of dealing with 60 degrees, or you might use the results of what you got before up here, the cosecant there. Remember that secant and cosecant are cofunctions, so you could possibly use that because pi over 6 and pi over 3 add up to pi over 2, or this is 30 and this is 60, they give you 90. There's several ways of looking into that. So cosecant of pi over 2 minus pi over 3, you're using the cofunctions, and when you subtract that, and I've shown the detailed subtraction here, it's pi over 6. The cosine of pi over 6 is what we just found earlier, or the cosecant of 30 is 2. So basically they're the same thing expressed in different forms.